Unfortunately, its true purpose is something much more entertainers and celebrities, by virtually every metric imaginable, this planet is in very good health. What do you do if your ratings are dropping and you are struggling to come back after a planet-wide pandemic? The first thing that you need to do is sing the Black National Anthem. Somehow, this was considered a good idea for the game between the Chiefs and the Texans. The crowd naturally erupted into boos over this atrocious happening. Ratings are dropping because of the incessant use of politics, as well as people realizing that watching sports is a waste of time. Imagine enraging the fans that braved everything to be at your game. The live-action version of Mulan is part of a long stream of Disney converting its classic films into live-action. In many ways, they expand the plot and add details that improve the viewing experience. I, however, will not speak for Mulan, as Disney decided that they would thank the Turpin Municipal Bureau of Public Safety. If that name does not mean anything to you, it is because you are someone that does not understand how fragile freedom is. To make a long story short, this is the agency that is responsible for the torture and needless imprisonment of countless Uyghur Muslims. Conditions include re-education, starvation, and unsanitary housing. This is to say nothing of how the guards treat the prisoners. In what universe does it make any sense to praise the perpetrators of human rights violations? It would make sense that if you run a business, you should be able to hire whosoever you so please. However, the American atheists do not see it this way. They say that Betsy DeVos's latest plan allows religious schools and universities to trample on human rights. I would like to point out that their worldview has resulted in more human rights violations than any other, but I digress. The argument comes down to students possibly being rejected based on religious standards, but the school is still getting taxpayer money. I would like to point out that since evolution has absolutely no evidence in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, it is a religion based entirely in faith. These atheists are essentially saying that they do not want Christians to be able to choose, but they have every right not to hire someone based on their worldview. If someone was in the hiring process and was turned down because they were a Christian, this would be discrimination as well. How about the private entity choose how they will spend the money? Now, we can discuss whether or not any school should be getting any tax money. The Tik Tok app has come under a lot of scrutiny, not just because of it possibly being taken down or getting a new owner. TikTok, like YouTube, allows users to post videos on just about any topic that they want. As such, small girls dance and parents want the app taken down because pedophiles are watching their children. I would like to point out that this is an incredibly small portion of the community. However, perhaps we can find even the slightest glimmer of hope in all of this. A user by the name of Inky Does Hair was an atheist that came to Christ after watching Christian videos on the platform. People are starved for good Christian content, and people are more obsessed with dance trends. President Trump has done more for peace in the Middle East than Bush and Obama did by bombing every last city that they saw. In what can only be described as divine providence, countries are opening themselves up to peaceful relations with Israel. These include Bahrain, Jordan, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates. Notably absent is Palestine, but I doubt they will see the light until the Battle of Armageddon. This is not a finished work, but it is a remarkable step in the right direction. Imagine for a moment a network so morally depraved that they watched 650 11-year-old girls twerk in auditions for grown men. Then, imagine the same network turned this into a film, and people paid the network to be able to watch it. This is not some twisted fantasy. This is the reality that Netflix is practicing presently. As a result, Netflix is seeing a rash of people canceling their subscription to the service. However, that is not the story for today. Senator Cruz, among others, is calling for the DOJ and the Senate Judiciary Committee to investigate Netflix for propagating child pornography. We will soon see whether or not any consequences will come. It is no secret that the NFL has largely drank the BLM Kool-Aid. They believe that blacks have been oppressed for centuries, not the least of which includes cotton fields. They are, however, more than willing to advertise shoes that are made by the use of slave labor in China. Remember the Betsy Ross shoes that Kaepernick forced Nike to cancel? Those were made by slave labor in China. Now the United States is taking a stand and barring imports from China that use forced labor. One of the products on the chopping block is cotton and cotton products. So, the NFL is fighting against imaginary systemic racism while supporting actual slave labor. How is that for irony? Fires are raging across the West Coast with no end in sight. While all of my friends have been marked safe, I cannot help but worry about countless other families that have lost everything because of the fires. Naturally, global warming is being blamed, but as I explained last week, it is the technology that has not been maintained that is the problem. Another problem is arson. Think about this. If you have a group that has no problem burning down cities and they see a forest fire, do you think they will? A. Have a change of heart and see how evil their actions are. Or B. Throw Molotov cocktails on the trees to make the fires worse. If you chose B, you are somewhat more intelligent than the average judge in Portland. A man who set a brush fire with a Molotov cocktail was arrested and released the same day. He then set 6 more brush fires. After all, they cannot just lock up these rioters, they have to set them free. I have no doubt whatsoever that this is getting as bad as it is, because there are even more arsonists out there that no one is willing to prosecute. This past Wednesday was Constitution Day, a day that we set aside to celebrate all of the rights and privileges that we have as Americans. It is often overshadowed by the 4th of July, but I digress. While at Hillsdale College, Attorney General Bill Barr stated that outside of slavery, these lockdowns were the single greatest civil rights violation that our country has ever known. He sent a letter to each state attorney general, telling them to look out for burdensome infringements on rights, such as the inability to hold worship services. Democrats are so willing to hold on to this as the new normal that even Kamala Harris and Joy Behar are questioning the use of a vaccine just because Trump supports it. So now, the Democrats and those with Trump derangement syndrome are the anti-vaxxers. They only use politics rather than science to comment on global warming, transition therapy, and abortion. It would make sense that this would be all about politics as well. Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion.